All right. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Lessons in Loss, Love, and Resilience. Today, I am joined by Phil and Katie. I hadn't met Katie before, but Phil and I have known each other for a long time. He used to coach for the soccer club I was running back in Napa Valley, back when he was a young single lad. Here in the Napa Valley. Most people know my story of losing my daughter in a mass shooting back in 2018. And I found that the lessons in love, loss, and resilience have really helped people kind of do that. And Phil and Katie, you guys have a different story, and I think this is one that's super unique. You're the first time I've had two people on as guests at the same time, so I like that, like mixing it up. But you guys have a really unique story with grief in your own initial relationships, and then now that you've found yourselves together, you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to start or me?
All right.
Okay. Well, yeah, Eric, thanks for having us. And, I remember hearing about Elena way back when and just being so struck by that and not having dealt with, a major grief or loss like that in my life. And I remember just being struck at how I thought you dealt with it with so much grace and resilience, and you and your family were really inspiration. And then, both of our lives have now been touched by intense grief, both losing our spouses at a young age. Yeah, my wife Lauren, she passed away about 3 years ago from glioblastoma, brain cancer. It was a relatively short illness of 13 and a half months from diagnosis to death. Katie and I share that we both lost our spouses, but we met through online of all things, very modern Instagram also of all things. It was Katie documented her journey with her husband and his illness. And I found it really helpful while dealing with our own journey. And you just sort of latch on to people that maybe sort of look like you and sort of are going through the same things, and you can see yourself in their position. And so, yeah, I followed Katie while Lauren and I were going through our journey together, and I found it extremely helpful. And then months later, after Lauren passed, I just wrote her and told her how much I appreciated what she did and that it really helped me. And then we struck up a friendship from there.
Sorry.
And a new relationship was born. So, Katie, so you lost your husband to cancer as well?
I did, yeah. My husband was diagnosed with colon cancer during the pandemic in 2020, and then he passed away same year, 2022. I was just really within months, or months of the same kind of part of the grief journey, I think, when Phil and I kind of connected initially. But I think it's kind of interesting, like having met on Instagram, because he says, oh, I think something you shared, resonated with me. And so then, you click, because again, like you said, you just are like, just looking for your own people, like your community, like who is like me. And you many times don't find it in your like direct community. I think Phil and I are we share in the experience that our spouses were, they kind of talk about like the first friend to die, or like that's very impactful. And it's not that other people haven't gone through this earlier, but just of our married friends that are having young children, my husband really was probably what I would consider kind of the first one to die. And I would think his friends would say the same. But you kind of are navigating this experience, you know, before everyone else. And I think some people, you're looking for anyone that's gone through it. And I'm really close to my parents. And I feel like there's many things in life, like or graduate college, or you buy your first house, or, or whatever you're doing, having kids for the first time, you like kind of go to people for advice, or what was it
Yeah.
like for them. And the same thing, I wanted the same thing when he was diagnosed, but also when he died. It was just like, you're just grasping for anyone to tell you how to do it, and where's the book on this that I'm supposed to follow. And
Yeah.
so I think the only thing that you find yourself doing really, it feels like the only thing I could do was find my own community. And so I was thankful that there was social media for that at that point, because I don't know how people died and grieved back in the day when there wasn't like, in many ways, I think that kind of maybe played into that, like widower mentality of like kind of, you know, retreating and being in your own space and being quiet in your grief and not talking about your person who died, because I think in many ways we just felt so isolated. People felt isolated, whereas now, you know, I think there's really a space that's can be helpful for people, and this is really great that you do this because I think it's just another avenue for people to find people that they resonate with.
Yeah, thank you. And it was surprising to me as it was starting to happen that I realized like people really do want and need to talk about this. And, you know, all in different stages. Some people it might be it helped him in those moments. And then you get to where, okay, you know, but then you could recommend somebody else who's then going through it. Two things when you were talking, Katie, that resonated. One was when we got the call that night from Pepperdine. I remember asking the question of how many more students are missing, because at the time the news was saying there's still people hiding in the building in XYZ. And I was hoping that they'd say, you know, like, oh, there's still quite a few. We're still trying to find out what's going on. There's people at the hospitals. And the answer was none, just Elena. And so there was a sense of relief that surprised me, like in there, that I don't understand why, other than the fact that maybe the grace that no other family was going through what we were going through in that moment. Because I think every minute that ticked by, we knew was more of a clarification of what the real result was. But when you talk about communication with others, it's amazing to me. And I feel guilty sometimes when I'm with others, because I'll pretty much come straight out and say whatever. And I get a lot more grace in saying things. Like if I were to turn and ask you guys, I would have less issue asking you about your journey because of what I've been through, versus if I was like, hadn't dealt with something of this, because then you might take offense to it, versus, you know, I'm coming from a different space, even though the other person might not intentionally be doing it, but you have this little bit of a connection that makes you allow people to have real conversations. Right. And that's kind of where this came about. Was I was finding people were giving me more opportunity to ask hard questions and then get real answers from real people dealing with real grief, you know? And so I really appreciate you guys coming on, and I'm really sorry that you ended up, you know, meeting Phil. He is not a very nice guy.
Yeah, he's all right.
No, on a serious note. So now we can get into it more too, if you have things jump in whenever, but now you both have children. So Lauren and Phil, you guys had one daughter.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And then Katie, you and your husband had more than one child, or?
2.
It's you. And so now you guys are, you know, you're not married, but you're, you know, your partners, where you've got this like cohabitated family.
Right.
And how is that going with, as a parent with a young child, helping them navigate the loss of a parent?
Yeah, well, I think what we glanced over at the beginning was that our relationship started from across the country, mine and me being in Atlanta, and Katie being in Portland. And so we did about 2 years of dating, while, you know, kind of sort of every 6 weeks co-parenting each other's kids, and just kind of jumping in and out of this friend, boyfriend, parent, co-parent role. And so I think it was confusing for the kids. It was confusing for us too, and just trying to figure out where our roles were in our family we have here. Since moving out here, it's been about 4 months, and I think it's getting easier, and our roles are becoming more well defined within the family, and the kid aspect of this whole thing makes it just infinitely more complicated. And we joke that if the kids weren't involved, this would be just so easy. Um, you know, it's just a mix, a soup of all these different emotions, and whether it's, you know, being protective or possessive over things, or, you know, I'm coming from a point where I had one child who is 5. Katie has 2, and so I feel like Katie has seen the like sibling dynamic before. And so when the kids fight, I think at first I was very like, I took it very personally, and I just was quick to maybe correct behavior where I thought that that was maybe inappropriate. But I've come to find out that siblings do fight, and that's pretty normal. And even the biological siblings, and so, you know, it's been a big learning curve for me, and now parenting three children, going from one to three, kind of seemingly overnight. But you know,
Were you an only child, Phil?
no, I have two sisters.
Okay, so you did have
He never
siblings.
fought.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Apparently.
because I know Elena and Alex all the time. Like they got along really well, but they also fought plenty too.
Yeah.
And I know my brother and I did. So when you said that, I was like, "Gosh, was he the only child?" And then I can see that. So
I think just looking at it through a parent lens versus being the kid that fought, it's a different lens than you're seeing it, and you're
yeah,
just like, and I've just never seen that with my daughter. It's like some behaviors that came out of her that that still come out, and just like, where did that come from? And she's dealing with having two big siblings where she used to be the one and only and got all the attention all the time, and so now she's down on the pecking order, and
the youngest. But at the same time, the youngest usually are the most. They're the most. I'd say the least in all the family. Seem the most observant because they watch the older ones make the mistakes,
yeah.
and then they get away with a little more because of it. At least that's what as the youngest kid, I knew how to get away with it. So
Yeah, I mean, Brooke. Oh, sorry.
You can say Burke.
no, you're okay.
Okay. The youngest is, I mean, she's very smart. I mean, she's smart as a whip. And so I think it's hard not to sometimes like hold her to the same standard. And my kids are older. My son's 9 now, and my daughter is 7. And so I think sometimes it's hard not, it's like once you get through that stage of parenting, you kind of just like write it off. Like you so quickly forget. But it's like, at the beginning of our relationship, Phil's daughter was still in pull-ups or or diapers or pull-ups, I think at that point. But just going back to those stages where it's just like it's like a new, I'm like, oh, that's right, we have to go back there, or oh, that's right, there's pickiness with food. You don't just like get what you get, and it's normal. But like, because I didn't follow this natural progression of like me knowing her wants and needs and likes and dislikes, it felt very like, what do you mean you don't like that? I just didn't see and it wasn't consistent, right? Because we were trying to do this every 3 to 6 weeks or whatever of like, or sometimes it was every 2 weeks. When he said seeing each other every 6 weeks, I mean, the reality of the fact is we actually made a very concerted effort. Like once this started, it was like, okay, well, we have to get to know each other to know if this is ever going to be a thing. It's not worth either of our time. We either have to be kind of intentional about it or not. And so there were a lot of times that every 2 weeks, and maybe one of
Yeah,
those times would be with kids. One of them would be a short trip without. But, I think it never really for us, like we wanted the kids to also, it had to be part of it. Each other needed to know our kids because they were part of us. So if we were ever going to make this work, each other needed to realize that,
right.
that it was a
All
package. But I think given the grief component of this, I think just moving or going back to kind of tying that in, and I think it's for us, it was nice to be able to like kind of, and not to say that you hold so much more space for milestone dates and things like that, but I think because our journey kind of started along the same continuum, it's been a little bit helpful because in my mind, I know just like Chris or like Thanksgiving or Christmas is coming up or the holidays or whatever, that is now like, oh, this is around the time that so and so started to get really sick. And now that we've done this on, going on 3 years, it's like I think we can kind of, not that we act or respond the same way each time, but I think we can kind of hold space for each other. It was a hard time. I mean, like springtime for me is, there's like a changing of the season, but there's also like, that was the last vacation we took. That was the last time I don't know. It just is like
Mhm.
all of these things kind of come up that are
Yeah,
like little, I don't want to say they're like mini triggers that maybe we don't respond the same way that we used to that first year, but they still affect you. Like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. And I mean, I think it's really interesting to hear you say that because it makes sense of the way you described it. Obviously, that's not something I've dealt with, right? Where you both are having those mini triggers, you're both having those little memories, and at the same time you're also in a new relationship, and there's doesn't I mean I like it when I do my public speaking. I'm like, look, we don't move on, we move forward. Like your and I apologize, I got Lauren's name. What was your husband's name,
Brian.
Katie? Brian. Lauren and Brian's passing, yet at the same time now you two and your families have come together in your life, and Lauren and Brian are, you'll carry them with you for the rest of your lives, right? They're not gone. They're gone here in present, like right here in body, but they're, like for us with Elena, every year on her birthday, we have dark chocolate something. And cause she
Yeah.
was all into it, prime rib or so, like she was beef and chocolate girl.
Yeah.
Um, and, but we don't have candles on the cake and stuff like that. That's just how we do it. Some people have like big celebrations. We talk about her all the time because she will be a part of our life forever. At the same time, it's still navigating it, like it's still seeing her friends graduate, and that's emotional for me because I see them doing what, like a friend walked down the aisle and she got married, and seeing the father walk the daughter down the aisle
Yeah.
is really hard. Now, when I see it on TV and it pops up and it's like National Daughters Day and all these people put out these things, there's nothing wrong with them doing it, but it hurts, it
Yeah.
hurts in those ways. At the same time, like I still look at all the things that I had, that how lucky I was. And, you know, and so, yeah, it's interesting to hear your guys' version because it's so different. Yet now the paths have crossed in such a way that's really awesome and unique, and sad that they had to cross, but amazing that they did cross. Like, I guess it's where I look at it and I go, look, I don't really go into the kind of religion piece, but the faith piece is, there's a lot we don't know. And I just feel like we're not in control here, and we will see them again at some point.
Yeah.
But it's pretty awesome to see. How have you guys gone with, like, in my book, there was frequently asked questions with my son. And so I had him and I answered some questions, and then he answered a couple. And one of the things that he said when it was like, what about that night? And he's like, nobody's ever asked me about that night. And I'm like, wow, because we've tried to stay very much like open and communicative.
Mhm.
I try to show when I'm having a tough day, I'm like, yeah, I'm really missing your sister today or whatever, and express that. So then he doesn't feel like he has to be strong for me. So when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't really realize it. And of course it was a blur, right? How has it been for you guys in communicating? Maybe this is more for you, Katie, because your kids were a little bit older to process it in a way, right? Um, are you
Yeah.
about Brian and and say like, I miss dad today, or I wish we could.
Yeah, they do. They're very different. I think it's very interesting to see, and I think that might be part of what, I don't wanna say complicates, but just makes each of our kids' journey different, is that, it's one thing to parent, it's another thing to parent grieving children, and it's a whole 'nother thing to parent grieving children that are different ages, right? Because these are, like, really formative developmental ages, and I think sometimes I think about that because I would say my daughter, who's 7, she was, let's see, 3 when he passed. And so when I think about the way she expresses, like she's very outwardly, like she likes wearing like all the clothes that had kind of the motto for his like cancer fighting journey that we kind of sported. Like she loves talking about him at show and tell. She likes, and I don't,
Yeah.
and I think part of it is, she likes going to seek out the counselor at school and talking about her dad, which is great, and I love that she can do that. Uh, and my son is much more introverted, and so I think that that is a component that he holds it in. I have to kind of, revisit, "How are you feeling?" Or, "Are you feeling you wanna do anything special for dad's birthday?" Or I think about him in different moments, like, if I see pictures of him in college with all of his friends, my son really kind of, he just loves all of who my, late husband was with, like, in his fraternity, like, he loves stories of his friends, and so any pictures, I always, like, think about him with those type of things because he just loves that connection, but he's not really outwardly like, he wouldn't do a presentation about his dad, I don't know, it's like he's just much more introverted, and sometimes I've thought of that, and the reason I mention it is because I feel like it's almost it was he was old enough to experience it so much that I think it's painful, and I think that's a result of it. I think it's painful to relive that because he has very distinct memories of it. Whereas
Right.
my daughter, I think, doesn't as much. So it's not a grief podcast if nobody cries. And I don't apologize for crying. I usually accidentally do, but I'm not. But I do feel like there is a sense that, he was there the day my husband passed in the hospital. I mean, he was very much a part of the death journey, and that was a choice I made on behalf of us, and I felt like it was an informed decision knowing my son and that he could, I don't wanna say not only handle it, but I thought it was important for him to understand that, dad fought as much as he did, and he didn't want that to happen, but it was a dying process, and that's kind of part of it, and when I look back on it, I don't have resentment on how that happened, but I think it makes sense that he very much understood what happened, that daddy's body died, whereas Sullivan, as she was leaving the hospital room the day before he died, turned to him because he was on really, like, high flow oxygen and turned to him and, like, kinda snapped her fingers, and we always joke about it, but she turned around and she was really she just was like a spicy little thing, and she goes, "I hope you get some oxygen," and we think about that, but it's like that was the last time she had with her dad, and she had no idea that that was the last thing that she would say to him or, that that was goodbye.
Yeah.
And then with Brooke, I think I'll let Phil speak on behalf of her, but,
Well, I think
I
with
don't think.
with Brooke, I mean, obviously, yeah, she was just 2 weeks shy of her second birthday, so even younger, and definitely doesn't have any, I don't think any concrete memory of Lauren aside from what we've been able to share with her through photos and videos, and I think that that's been a big part of being really intentional about sharing those with her, and and she'll ask for it too. She'll ask to see pictures of mommy and videos, and I think that that's been how I've been able to keep her, tied to her mom, and it's just like I always waffle between, am I just devastated that she doesn't remember her mom, or am I just so thankful that she doesn't have to remember her mom, a sick person that, in her mind she can remember the photos and the videos of her when she was not ill, and that's what will live on in her memory. And so, you know, neither are great options, but
Yeah.
And I think Phil and I have both, like, mentioned just wanting the girls, like, not to feel, like, any feelings of guilt around that. Like, I feel like my dog tends to almost wanna cover up that she doesn't have the memory, and so I just kind of keep making it loud and clear known to her that it's like it's okay, like, that's normal for someone your age to not remember. That's why we love sharing these stories, and you do remember some of it, but a lot of it is normal not to, honey, and it doesn't mean that you loved him any less or that, your relationship was different. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I can't remember where I put my keys down, you know? Like, but I feel like,
Wait, am I?
so
I Hannah frequently. I've seen it. My wife Hannah is. I've seen a change in her where it's become more introspective for sure. She's very intentional about being present. Like she'll frequently just put her phone down and like to be with someone and talk to them or whatever. And then 2 hours later, I'm like, so I've been texting you, like,
yeah.
but because I know it's not intentional. I also have to give her that space and understand that it's like we all do this different. I think for her is if she can't have like a conversation with like a real conversation that with somebody, she's not gonna send a text message or whatever to try to manufacture it, if that makes sense. Like she's very intentional on like, look, when we're there to process, we'll process, if that makes sense. And so just even seeing her, my son and I all through the same tragedy, but how we've each kind of dealt with it differently has been really interesting. My wife's a very strong Catholic. She's of Filipino descent, and she had her faith and religion that's really helped her in that way. My son's kind of found his own faith in the process and his religion, and I admire how much he's really sought it out in his own ways. And for me, it's been a journey to really kind of understand it. And part of it's become through signs that I've seen, like things that have happened that just blew my mind, that made me realize, like, maybe we don't know everything. Maybe there is more after this. And maybe, and so it's really had me open my eyes and do it. So it's been so different, even in the three of us. So that's why I love your guys' story, is there's like two different families that have now come as one, and three children who are also different ages. It's just really interesting because, everybody's doing this in a different way.
And it's not only we are, yes, we are two families, but we also have two families that come with each of us as well. It's like, I have my family and I have Lauren's family, and we're so blessed that everybody has been so welcoming and just, they just love and they just understand what we're going through and are supportive of us, and have kind of welcomed each other and our families with open arms. And I'm hoping for one day we all get together and have a big griefy Christmas or something together.
Greedy Chris. Sounds like some sort of Adam Sandler movie down the road, right? What? So have your family like now?
Yeah.
Well,
Well, no, Megan.
yeah,
Her
I don't think
family.
I don't think Lauren's family and Brian's family have met yet. That might be the last piece.
Got it. Which makes sense. Well, the reason why I asked too is in my book I talk about a friend. So Phil, I told you one of my very close friends lost his wife to ovarian cancer when she was, I think, 24-ish. We had all gotten out of college. Actually, Hannah and I moved our wedding date because they still had gotten engaged, even though she was already diagnosed. He still proposed, and they got engaged and were going to get married. And we were supposed to get married on the same day. And I was like, okay, all my fraternity brothers are going to have to choose, and I don't want them to have to choose. I want them to go to theirs, but I also would like them to come to mine. So we moved ours up a week, and she passed away a couple of years later after, constant battle with ovarian cancer, and it kept spreading. And then he went through, 8 or so years of grief, and people kept trying to set him up and doing all these things. And finally he meets this woman, Diana, who's awesome. And his wife, Tessie, was like, she was the woman that would go out with the whole fraternity and like hang out with all of us, and she'd be giving the guys crap, which, so we're like, she was awesome to hang out with. And so, we all loved her, and there was a big piece there. And then he meets Diana, who is awesome, and they've since been married and have 2 children, and their son Tasso was about a year old. So 2 days after Elena's murder, we're in Southern California, and they still live down there. And he messaged me and said, "Hey, would you like to meet my son Tasso?" And I said, "Oh, I think we'd love that." And so we had found out on Thursday morning. This is Saturday morning before we flew home. And he shows up, and I look over at him, and with tears in my eyes, I was like, Tasso's here because Tessie's not. And I said, like, you two would have never met, and this little child wouldn't have been born. And, and I don't understand it, but so we're both there with, and I'm handing Tasso yogi snacks or something to keep him interested in this bald guy hanging out with him. And so it was one of those moments that really kind of blew my mind. And so what was fun talking to Billy and Diana is that Tessie's family, like, they're actually referred to as Oma and Opa. I think they're Dutch descent. And so their kids call them Oma and Opa as if they're still grandma and grandpa. Like, there's that connection to the family, and they're very welcoming of Diana and everything, which is pretty awesome. And obviously it seems like you're getting a similar reaction from the family, which is pretty amazing, because I'm sure there's some people that sadly their families are struggling with it because, like, whatever the reasons are, where they I don't know, but that's amazing that your families have really embraced each of you and this whole journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think too, they realize we can only do so much when it comes to like where we would love to be with everyone, on all of these on holidays or, I don't know, important family vacations or anything else. It's like unlike anything else. So
Mhm. Yeah. So Phil, I didn't realize you both that she was in Oregon. When I first talked to you, I thought you guys were in Atlanta. You just happened to relocate to Oregon together. So you had been a long distance relationship for a little while then.
Very
That's
long,
definitely
about as long as it gets. So I got very good at that.
yeah.
Well, not
Delta
really.
flight.
Miami to Seattle. Yeah,
Some international
exactly.
love stories here.
Yes, exactly. So now kids are going. Your youngest, Brooke, is she in kindergarten now?
She's in pre-K.
Pre-K.
Yeah.
Okay. And all the way up to fourth grade,
Oh,
third grade,
yeah.
fourth.
Wow, good.
I have a niece and nephew, and one's
Yeah.
close to the age, and so I'm like, "Ugh." um, so they are. This is awesome. So you guys now, like in terms of your moving forward with this, is this like, are you guys looking this like resilience to say, hey, we just take this day? Like, how do you get through day in and day out? Is like, oh, we just do this as it comes, or
Yes and no. And right, it's yeah, I think like we talked about earlier, there's no playbook for this. And there's no real, I can't ask my parents what is it like to lose your spouse and to parent, someone else's, biological children. And, there may be some people I can relate on certain levels to different parts of our story, but what we're going through is very unique. And I think that we just try to give each other a lot of grace and listen and try to understand, where we can be most helpful. And I think that's served us well to date.
Yeah, and I think it's not like a plug and play scenario. Like, I think that's what we've kind of found is like for him coming out here, it was very much like, you know, you know, there were moments of like, I'm not Lauren, you're not Brian, like we are our own people. I think there within the navigation of that is like, okay, I don't want you to be him. I love you for you, and I do love learning about you and what makes you tick and what you like and you don't like and what you do well and you don't do. But I remember a conversation Phil and I had at one point that got kind of emotional about that, and I just said, okay, well this doesn't have to, or this isn't about like wanting Brian back, but it is who I married. And I married him because he had these qualities that I did like. And so I was just like, I think sometimes we bring these things in like, are they a grief component or are they just a relationship thing? And I think you can navigate that on a lot of different levels. Like I think we can always bring, where has becoming a widow or widower, like where has that changed us, or where does that kind of change our viewpoint on life, or seeking out another partner or whatever, I don't know. Is it just really not, does not apply, like at this point. So I don't know.
no? That's great advice. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, no, I think that all. I mean, I remember that conversation very well, and I mean, the same was pitched back to her, and
Yeah.
it's like, she's not Lauren, and Lauren, what she brought to our family and our relationship is different than what Katie does, and my moving to Oregon was a big leap of faith, and just knowing that what I know about Katie and her family and her kids and everything and her life here, what that would bring to my life and Brooke's life would be just so positive that it's worth
Yeah.
uprooting everything that we had going, and that, just at some point one of us was going to have to do it, and we would have never found out if this would possibly work or not, if one of us hadn't given it a try. I don't know. I mean, I moved around a lot as a kid. Obviously, I met you out in California years ago. That was my first job after college, and I moved around. And so the thought of moving wasn't as scary for me, especially with one child who was younger. And then, Katie has deep roots here in the Pacific Northwest, and with the two older children, and it just made a lot of sense to give it a go out here. And we're glad that we did.
You guys, I mean, everything I'm hearing from you from the beginning has been very much surrounded around like communication. You seem like you really communicate well to each other. Is that a fair assessment? Like, I mean, because ultimately, it's they. I mean, I learned this from a friend who kind of a mentor, where it's like the 4 C's of building a relationship or a team is communication builds connection, connection makes commitment happen. And after commitment, you get care for one another, right? So you can either do that in a business relationship, a personal relationship, or whatever. But everything I'm hearing you guys talking about is like, it comes back to, okay, we've had hard conversations and we've had real conversations and we've tried to be super open with each other. Is that the case, or has it been harder than you're playing it off to be? I mean, is that your suggestion to people?
Well, I think I can speak for both of us when I say that, like, we had lived after losing our spouses. Like, I think what was difficult is, like, the communication piece. It's like, that was just another step. That's like when people were trying to help, but you're like, "I don't wanna explain to you how to do this." Like, it's gonna be more work than just doing it myself. And, because you get all these people after, your person dies or you're doing things alone that are offering help, but it's like, you just know that's gonna be more work. And so I think for us, it was like that was part of, I think, the hard part about bringing it together is like, do I explain how to do this? Does he even explain how to do that or that part of his life or what he does or not, And I think we're finding now that yes, we communicate in different ways and, calendars in general. He's like, sends me all these invites over email, which I don't respond to because I don't really know why he does it, but I'm like, "Sure, if that's what you want me to just subscribe to, I will subscribe." And he will go in and chicken scratch his additions to my paper calendar. Is this sounding familiar? Yeah.
Way more familiar than you might realize, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
And so I think, yes, Phil has had to say, like, "You just have to write it on the calendar." I was like, "But I told you," like, literally 30 minutes ago. Like, I thought maybe you'd remember. Like, maybe that's like
Sounds that sounds very, very familiar, and it's funny because, gosh, it was just like a week ago where she's like, "I asked you to bring home blah, blah, blah," and I go, "But you created like a list, a shopping list on our notes, and if you don't put it on there, then in my head, because sometimes she goes and picks something up and then clicks it off the list, and it's like, if it's not but that took years because before she would send me text messages, but if I was trying to get out of work and I have grocery stores, and so if I was trying to get out of work and I'm like, okay, I can get out of here, I'd leave. Well, then if she's like, well, I sent you a text message to bring home, da, 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 da. So we had to, okay, we need to figure what's the new system? Like, how are we going to make this work? Because, and Hannah's the same. She'll make a list like by hand. She has beautiful writing, and mine's chicken scratch too. That's why I was laughing at. So she'll making this list, and I'm just like, and so one time I needed a little note, and I took her list and I like ripped to the bottom like a little piece of paper off to write myself a note, and she was so upset with me. Like, this is years ago, and I'm like, what? It's just your list. She's like, yeah, but you couldn't have used any other piece of paper. I'm like, you weren't even using that half of the, like, so anyway,
Yeah.
it's our brains work different, right? And that's just learning to
I'm like your wife
understand
on
and
this one.
yeah, I'm sure. I'm
I
actually
don't
with
know
her
if I have to
too.
say that out loud, but yeah, that would have irked me too.
I don't disagree. I think the difference now, like post losing our daughter, is now I look at it and I give her that space. I respect the things that are important to her. That before I was like, it's not a big deal. But now I'm like, but is it that big of a deal for me to get a piece of paper too, right? Like,
Right.
how easy can, like, I was thinking I was saving like paper by using the same piece, like using parts of it, like being better for the environment. She was not thinking that. So now I look at it and I go like, I'll just grab another piece of paper,
Yeah.
or I'll put it on a calendar in my phone. Oh no,
Yeah.
I don't blame you
I
guys.
mean, combining calendars, that's like a big relationship thing, I feel like. Along with pictures, that was one of the latest things we were trying to like figure out how to incorporate our family pictures everywhere, which we had said kind of from the get-go, like we want Phil's daughter to feel at home here too and be represented and make sure Lauren is here as well. I just don't have a lot of pictures of my family up yet, and it's one of those things I've been meaning to do. We've been here forever, but we just never had a lot of family pictures, but I know the kids would really like that. So, anyways, I think that'll be a nice way to bring everything together, have everyone represented.
Yeah, everybody, because in the end, they're all a part of our life, right? no matter what the reason, the season, or the lifetime that they're here. So there's still that knowing Brian's traits, because I would assume your children, they're going to have certain traits that are Brian's traits,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And same thing for Brooke with Philip, with like she'll have certain things from Lauren, even just unintentionally, that they might do. They just remind you. That's just, it makes it kind of all in awesome. So. Well, Katie, Philip, I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I think it's, like I said, I love the fact that this is a totally different like view on the story of both losing a spouse and then navigating, helping your children through the process, and then navigating a new relationship in it too. So, because some people might be going through one of those three, and to think like, okay, like how do you do that? But I really appreciate you guys taking the time and joining me on the episode. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And I mean, I really love sharing my story and being able to, you know, be on your platform, and what you do on every day is a special thing for me. And I want you to know how much I appreciate what you're doing and giving voice to people that are dealing with grief. And so
Well, it obviously worked for you with Katie doing it, right?
yeah, exactly.
That's
I'll start stalking
when
you
I said,
too. No,
yeah, if this can help just one person,
Yeah.
then it's worth it.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you.